Hey guys, before we start, a quick shout out to Alpha Dog Nutrition for sponsoring this podcast. Alpha Dog products are now available at dusupply.com, and you can use code ALPHADOG15 at checkout for 15% off and a credit for free shipping to try it yourself. Now let's get you to your podcast.
Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Hey friends, Steve Fielder here with you once again on the Gone to the Dogs podcast. Coming at you here in the month of January. We're recording this on the evening of January 16th and will be airing on January 20th. So at any rate, it's wintertime in Florida. Believe it or not, we do get a little cooler weather here at times. And our guest this week is from Hotlanta, Georgia. It's not so hot these days. Mr. Matthew Huff, a friend of mine that I'm really interested or excited, I should say, to introduce to you. How are you, Matthew?
I'm doing well, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing great. I just a little raspy today, a little more so than usual. My brother's been visiting with me from Virginia, and of course, you know, he's a fielder also. And if anybody's been listening to this podcast very long or know me from down through the years, that, you know, I talk a lot.
That's a big surprise.
Yeah, I'm sure. Matthew, I had to go back and look through my log of prior guests to realize that I haven't actually had you on the podcast before, have I? Or at least this one?
No, this is the first time we've been recorded.
Oh, that's cool. Well, to give our listeners and to kind of refresh my memory a little bit, you, as we say, you live in the state of Georgia. I think when we probably first met through social media, I believe, isn't that right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we first met face to face at the Grand American.
That's right.
And I believe you said 21 was the year.
Yeah, 2021. Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
I had just driven cross country from California to Georgia, and then went out to the Grand American.
Yeah.
Right after.
Now your story is kind of interesting to me, and I remember when I first met you and first started communicating a bit with you, is that you weren't, you know, raised up as a coon hunter. You weren't from a hunting family, were you?
No, that's right. I was not.
Right. And you obtained a crossbred Bluetick walker.
He looks like a walker, yeah.
Looks more like
I call
walker.
him a walker. Yeah.
And you called him Sargeant. Or Sarge,
Sargeant
right?
Dan Quayle, yeah.
Sargeant Dan Quayle.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting combination there.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt, all right, tell me how old you are.
I'm 39.
39 years old.
Yeah.
And holding, right?
39 what?
And holding.
And holding,
Yeah,
sure.
that was like the old Jack Benny, I think. He was always 39. And, you
All
know,
right. Yeah.
but he was well beyond that, yeah. Well, it's an interesting story. Matt, tell me how you, well, for right now, I'll just kind of give a little overview. Met you on Facebook, I believe. Communicated some about your dog. You were pretty, I don't mean this as a derogatory term, but you were pretty green to the sport of coon
hurt my
hunting.
feelings. No, that's true.
And you had questions, and you had a lot of intelligent questions about working with your dog and all. How did that start for you? How did this coon hunting thing? But how old were you at the time that Sarge came into your life?
I believe I was 35 or 34. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 2020 is when he came into my life, and yeah, like you said, I didn't grow up hunting. I grew up in Southern California, and or I say I was raised in Southern California, and I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. But I had traveled back and forth California to Missouri, and went to college in Oregon. The pandemic changed everything, and so I had the opportunity to move to Northern California and help my buddy develop some of his land. He wanted to start farming up there, and so I started living the country life, and it was the breath of fresh air I didn't know I needed. And
Were you
it
in
was pretty awesome.
L.A. in Southern California?
I was in LA. Yeah, I was in the
Yeah.
heart of LA. I was living in downtown LA at that time.
Wow.
In the Arts District, yeah. And so I moved to a little town in Mendocino County, and I had Sundays off, so I was working up there. Is really secluded place, and I had Sundays off, and I used to fish, and I love fishing, so I would go to a little lake there, and one Sunday afternoon. Well, it's funny because actually the night before, so Saturday night, I had been thinking, I was like, man, I would love to have a dog, and I really want to learn to hunt. Being up there, I was inspired by living in nature, being outside all the time, and just wanted to tap into that. But I had no access to it. I didn't know where to begin. But I knew I wanted a dog, and I knew I wanted to hunt. And so I Googled, what's the best hunting dog? I started researching hunting dogs, not knowing anything. And literally the next day, I was fishing. Sun had set already. It was dusk. And this dog burst out of bushes right next to me. And he actually stirred up some quail. That's how he got his name. And he followed me back to my truck. And yeah, the rest is history, really. And that's when I kind of figured out what he was and what I thought he was, and realized, okay, I think he's a coonhound, and he's acting like one. He sounds like one. I just let him run loose on the property. He was chasing deer and treeing fair cats, and doing everything. And actually, I used to listen to your old podcast, and I heard you guys talk about what coonhounds do, how they trail and track, and then they'll locate, and then they'll tree. And so I heard you guys describing this, and one afternoon I was working, and I heard him, and I said, wow, that sounds pretty good. That sounds like he's on a track. And a little while later, it continued, and then I heard him locate a long ball, and he started treeing, and I was like, I had to just drop what I was doing, ran to him. And I actually have a picture of him up on this tree that had fallen down, and he was just singing, and it was a pretty cool moment. From then on, I really started researching how to train coonhounds, and that's when I started writing you questions and stuff.
Right. Well, as I remember seeing Sargeant Dan quail and thinking, well, he may be a crossbred.
Right.
His ears were a little shorter than most Walker dogs, but he's very well made and a great looking dog. He just has that look of I call it a truck buddy, a dog that I would like to have on the front seat beside me.
Totally. And that's where he likes to be.
Really.
He's not. He doesn't get to ride up there with me anymore, but that's where he used to be. But he used to jump and cross my lap just to about dive out the window anytime he saw anything with four legs out the window. So I had to
restrain him a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've got this 5 month, soon to be 6 months old. In fact, I think in 2 days, this pup, we call him Boo. His name is Ghost, and he loves to ride the front seat. And I let him ride all the way out to Arkansas, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But, and he's just great that way. and
Yeah.
he's full of energy and all. And you'd think he'd just be bouncing all over the truck. Not so, man. When he gets in that truck, he just, I don't know if the motion or something just kind of soothes him or calms him down a little bit. But he basically just curls up and sleeps there and then every once in a while he'll get up and sit up and look around, but
That's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's what from the start I wanted to do with this pup is, especially given my age and where I live and all that, I wanted this pup to be that kind of a companion dog because his
road dog.
Yeah, road dog. There you go. Perfect description. Well, so you got this dog now that you've heard him trail, locate, and tree, and it kind of kindled a little fire, didn't it?
For sure. Yeah, it sparked a big one. And it's been pretty cool. I've met a lot of people, and it's been really cool meeting people through the internet. And I think that year, the first year that I had him, I drove cross country 3 or 4 times. And the whole, every trip I would just reach out to people from wherever I was and say, hey, you want to hunt? Is there places to go? And I'd hunt a lot by myself, and, I was just trying to figure it out. But it was definitely sparked a fire for sure.
Right. And now it looks like you've graduated. I don't know if that's graduation or what, but you have another coonhound in your life.
I do, yeah.
Tell me about Ruby.
So Ruby, Big Fancy Blue Ruby is her full name. She's my first registered hound, and she's PKC and UKC registered. And she actually, I got from someone I met online, David Simons, in Texas. One of my trips,
let me jump in here,
sure.
and as I tend to do,
I
see you said her sire is or actually, where Kelly Littlejohn's Big Rock, is that her sire?
Her sire is Kelly Littlejohn's Big Rock, yeah.
Yeah, and now Kelly Littlejohn's been around a long time with the blue dog. Yeah, and he's in Texas.
Kelly Littlejohn is in, I think I don't know if he's in Texas or Arkansas.
It could be Arkansas. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's in Arkansas.
Okay.
And so I met the Ruby's dam's owner, and the dam is Simon's Uchman Blue Fancy. And so I met David. He's been a coon hunter for a long time, but like you, I guess I signaled enough that I was pretty green when I was writing messages to people online, and he picked up on how green I was. So he reached out to me, and he said, hey, I'm actually from California, and I've been coon hunting for years and years. And so we became friends, and
awesome.
I would always reach out to him, and he's been awesome helping me, learn how to do this thing. And so I think it was maybe 2 years after we had first started talking, he called me one day and said, hey, I'm thinking about breeding Fancy. I had met her before, and he'd seen Sarge, and we'd hunted, and or just kind of gone out. He showed me his property where he trains dogs and stuff. And but he called me and he said he was thinking about breeding her, and told me who he was looking at breeding her to, what stud dog he was going to go with. And he said Big Rock, and I knew that was off of Big Country, and famous dogs, great pedigree. And so I was like, man, that sounds great. Congratulations. That's really exciting. I was happy for him. And then he said, oh, well, I'm being pretty selective with who's going to be on the list. If you're interested, I think you'd be, someone I would trust a pup with. So I said, definitely. So sent him a deposit, and I drove out to Texas. She'll be 2 years old February 2nd. So I picked her up at 7 weeks old. in Texas.
Okay, I'm looking at a video clip here on your page that you posted in December of 23. And you said she's not firing on all 12 cylinders yet, but this 10-month-old has spark, and she really looks good on that tree and sounds good.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
Yeah. So
She's been a handful and a real joy. She's wild. She's fast. She's loud. And I'm really, I think when I first started, and maybe a lot of people feel this way, they're like, oh, this is cool. I can do this, and you hear all these success stories and you see people doing it online and people winning trucks and all this stuff. And you're like, wow, I'm going to be great. This is going to be amazing. And now I think back of what you often say to the kids, like, hey, maybe plan your career and then be a professional coon hunter after you retire or whatever, because it's no joke trying to raise a coon dog and hunt them as much as they need to be, especially the ones that are bred like this, But it's been a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, and this sport is always changing as you progress along the way through the years. And I grew up in a home. We always had a pen full of plot dogs out at the back of the property.
Yeah.
And I had dogs all my years growing up, and then went away from them for a while as I was in college and in the Air Force. Although the first year I was in the Air Force, I was able to hunt there in San Angelo, Texas, that whole year, which was pretty awesome. Well, except for basic. But anyway, it's like we go through stages, and now here I find myself at 78 years old, raising a coonhound puppy at home, and not just any coonhound puppy, but a competition-bred, fire-breathing puppy.
Right.
And, he's sired by the Fever dog that we have, and Fever has just, he has more drive and determination and go power than two dogs, So I knew this.
His accolades speak for himself. That's a pretty impressive dog for sure. I'm really
we were very, very blessed, and can thank Bill Shenninger for raising that litter. And of course, he came from a female that we'd raised here in Florida, and Bill's great stud dog Lazarus, and so we're very, very blessed there. But I figured, or I hoped, let's put it that way, that this pup would be like his dad, and he certainly acts like him at this stage.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But anyway, the point I was going to make is, there are challenges that come, even to somebody like me that's been around hounds all my life, You look at, they're all individuals, and, it takes a little bit different effort, for each one. You have to kind of tailor their training to their personalities, and you always want to seek that balance. You want the dog to obey, you want the dog to handle, but you also don't want to lose any of that fire and drive and determination that makes them a great hunting dog. So seeking or finding that balance can be a challenge sometimes, but it's a process. And I think of this all the time, and you probably can comment on this. You have to be patient, and it comes in steps, baby steps. It's a progressive thing, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I can see now with Boo at almost 6 months old, he's certainly settled down a lot, and he's learned a lot, and he's got, all kinds of learning ahead of him. But I always want in this podcast, Matthew, to encourage the hound people. Because there can be, it's just like raising kids. there are challenges, and
Yeah.
it's not always easy, is it?
No, it's definitely not. And I don't have kids. Lord willing, I will in the future. But my dad's told me, he's seen me fooling with these dogs, and he's like, it's probably a good thing that you have these dogs before you have kids, because I can see that you're learning a lot from them, learning how to, you know, like you said, tailor to their needs, but find that balance of, um, how you work together and get them to do what you want, but get it to be what they want to. And
Well,
yeah,
the point I'd like to make right here is, there are people that still, unfortunately, get a well-bred coonhound pup, put it in the kennel, maybe, from the time it's weaning age and bring it home, put it in the kennel, go out and feed it once or maybe twice a day, put water out for it, and that's all the socialization that puppy gets. That's all the communication he gets, or association with his owner or the hunter that he's going to be expected to spend time with in the woods, and then when it's so big, then take it out and expect it to perform. And
yeah,
it just doesn't happen that way. You
right,
don't take a kid to kindergarten and say, okay, I'll pick him up at 5 today and hand me his diploma, when
right,
you have his diploma ready.
for sure, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, and it's hard. You're right. It's hard, and so it's good that you try and encourage people, because and that's what I think a lot of my friends that I've met through coon hunting. We are constantly talking to each other and say, hey, it's cool. It's just a puppy. Have fun with it. Kind of step back, and
Hmm.
it's so easy to get really focused on whatever it is, whatever issue you're dealing with, and forget about what they were doing last year and how far you've come, and be like, okay, you
Mm-hmm.
know what, we've gone a long ways, and this isn't the end of the world. There's always tomorrow night, and we're just
Oh,
going
yeah.
to take it one step at a time.
Great advice. And to have a group that you can work with, it's great.
Oh
To
yeah,
have, friends, a community.
for
That was
sure.
what I think was great about the age of the coon clubs, in years gone by. Unfortunately, coon clubs, the members aren't as active as they once were, as I recall when I was a
Right.
teenager and so forth. But, and I think people are a little more willing to share their experiences maybe now. There was a lot of
Sure.
machismo. Is that
I
the
can
word?
imagine.
Machismo? How do you pronounce that word?
Machismo.
Machismo. Thank you,
Yeah.
sir. We were, oh man, you got big enough to be a coon hunter. You had to know everything. Your dog was
Right.
all better than everybody else's. You'd
Yeah.
never, ever admit to any shortcomings.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
yeah.
we you said we'll talk about the White River, but real quick, that was something I told a guy that I met out there. Just ran into him. My dog was gone. She was out of the country. You could hear her a ways away, and I passed these coon hunters, and they were the first people I actually saw coon hunting. And he's like, "Oh, is that your dog over there?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I think she's, honestly, I think she's running a deer. I don't know." He's like, "Wow, you don't meet too many honest coon hunters." And that kind of struck me funny. I was like, "Well, I got nothing to hide." Lo
Yeah.
and behold, she was treed with a coon. It was, but
Yeah.
she sounded like she was running junk. So maybe she had some help. I don't know.
Right. Well, that's all part of the process for the dogs and the hunters alike. It's a world of sound.
Yeah.
For the hunter, for the dog, it's a world of smells, scents, and odors
Right.
and all. But it's such a great sport. All right, well, we might as well jump into that. There's a couple things I want to talk to you definitely about. And one is that you've been doing some humanitarian work
Right.
I assume through your church or maybe, right? And it involved my home state, the state of West Virginia. Give me a little bit of background on that and how that came about.
Yeah. So last summer, I had the opportunity to go with my church, and a group of about 25 of us went from Georgia. I go to a church in Atlanta called St. John the Wonder Worker. It's an Orthodox Christian church, and we went with, I don't know how many other groups there were from different states, Pennsylvania, all over, different Orthodox youth groups. And we partnered with a group called Appalachian Service Project, and their mission is to I forget what their motto is exactly, but it's to help people with their basic needs who don't have help otherwise, and that's staying warm, dry, and
clothed and fed, I would imagine.
Yeah, but it's specifically for their houses, so it's all home repair, and which is cool because I do construction for a living now, and so that was kind of how there was an announcement at church, and I was like, oh, cool, well, I might be able to help out with that, and so they asked me to be one of the group leaders, and then I actually led a tool safety class and things like that. So the kids get familiar with, learning basic tools and power tools. And we built some benches for our church as kind of a demo project or to get everyone used to using the tools. And so we went to Wyoming County in the Guyan Valley, a little town called Brenton, West Virginia. And they have a base there, the Appalachian Service Project. It's called ASP, and it's kind of like a youth camp, but instead of just playing games and doing different activities all day, the kids are working 8 hours a day fixing houses, and it was pretty incredible to witness and really awesome to be a part of.
Let me jump in here just a minute,
Sure.
Matthew. Now, was this prior to the flooding from Hurricane Helene?
It was.
Okay,
yes.
right.
So I imagine they're probably going to change a little bit. I looked up just before we talked. They sent me an email that kind of had a breakdown of everything that they did last year, and they had projects in 17 counties in 4 different states, and they helped 232 families.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and they totaled it to 9.2 million labor hours that were volunteered, and $9.2 million worth of labor. And they're super organized, and it was really nice to go and be a part of that because they had all the materials. They had a shop where you can rent out tools. They delivered the materials to the job sites, and then you have a handbook, and you kind of go over things each day and measure progress. And each they only take on projects that they are confident they can finish throughout the summer, because it's different groups every week all summer long. And we happened to be the last week, which is kind of cool, but it was a lot of pressure. We had to finish the whole job, and this particular family we helped had a new roof, all new siding, new underpinning, insulation, and some interior floor work done. But
Isn't
they
that
do
amazing?
everything. Yeah.
Through the news outlets and social media, I've just been amazed at the way people have stepped up, the volunteers. And we hear of the groups like Samaritan's Purse and the different ones that go in to help, people in need. And I lived in Ashe County, North Carolina, I had a cabin there when I
Mm.
retired at AKC, and that's one of the areas that was hit very hard by the flooding and so forth. And so I've kind of followed along with things that are going there. But the point being, it's amazing to me how, when a need like this arises, not only do people step up and say, "Okay, I'll go and I'll help and I'll drive a nail or I'll carry a block or whatever," but there are organizations or people or leadership in place to make it happen,
Yeah.
and obviously your group is one of those, and man, to me that's just so impressive, just
Yeah.
really impresses me that this is you're able to do that, because you've got to have organization for any effort like that, or
For
you're going to
sure.
be spinning your wheels, right?
Right. And yeah, that's the thing. It really helps to have that, you know, structure, because there are a lot of people who want to help, and sometimes it's hard to get them plugged into, places where they can actually help. But they do a great job of,
Yeah,
you know, enabling people to do a lot of work, and and then they can actually help a lot of families. And I actually
sure.
forgot, but with the recent hurricane Helene, I had the privilege of driving to North Carolina a couple times to deliver water that was all donated from a local restaurant in Atlanta. They have a sister restaurant in Asheville. So I just drove a box truck up there with water. And before that, there was a group called Footprint, and they had someone drive from Florida, I guess from a previous hurricane. They had someone drive from Florida, but they couldn't go all the way to North Carolina. So I picked up the truck and trailer and drove solar panels and equipment to make, mobile power grids that they were then helicoptered to different locations that they didn't have power yet. So, and they're based in Louisiana, and they just travel around, and they're again super organized. And I just, someone said, "Hey, we need someone who can drive from Georgia to North Carolina." And I said, "Sure, I'll do it." And I didn't know anyone, but they plugged me right in, and I picked up a rental truck and, just went, and it was pretty cool to be able to help them out in that way.
That's got to be extremely gratifying, Matthew, and I definitely applaud you and your efforts, and I'm so thankful that you are willing to help.
Yeah.
You're from Southern California. You live in Northern California. You go to school in Oregon. You're raised up, I guess, in Kansas City, and here
Yeah.
you are over in the first case there in Wyoming County, which was a bordering county to the county where I was born. I was born in
Right.
Raleigh County. The terrain is very much similar in those two areas. And yes, there are people there that need help. You know,
For sure.
the geographical limitations have always challenged the residents of those areas, and virtually coal was the only thing. The
Right.
way maybe the timber business, but anyway, people there to make a living is very hard, and
For sure.
and the challenges that have come along as coal has decreased and people found themselves virtually with no way to support themselves, and unfortunately that's where things like drugs and all of that has
Right.
really devastated those areas. It's a beautiful state if you like rugged
It was
beauty.
so beautiful. I was like, man, this looks like paradise to me. It was really awesome to drive there. And it was a place I would never have gone otherwise.
Yeah.
And people that I got to meet, and really, Steve, I appreciate your kind words, but glory to God.
Oh, absolutely,
It's
Matthew.
I'm privileged to be able to offer that, and have the time and whatever.
Hmm.
But I just think, people have helped me in so many different ways, and that's always my prayers that I can love people the way that Christ loves us, and that's all I can hope to do.
Yeah.
I don't always do it that way, but that's my aim.
Well, we don't. We fail daily. I do, and
For sure.
but He's always there to forgive us and to encourage us and to assure us that He He is not going to criticize and blame and I don't know, ostracize us or whatever the word I'm trying to use for our shortcomings. He's going to love us through them. And, I see folks in our sport, have struggled with addictions and so forth. And to see the grace of God in their lives is truly awesome to see.
That's great.
And,
yeah, for sure.
It is. Well, so I had to kind of chuckle a little bit when you answered an email and you talked about something about a holler, and I said, well, this guy's getting it. He's picking up the local jargon there, because that's what we say back there in the hills and hollers of West Virginia. And I think I've attempted a time or two to explain to people what a holler is. That's a hollow would be the correct term. What did you think of those?
It's cool because they're, the road where the town was that we were on, it follows a river, so it's windy, but then there's forks that just fork off of that river, and there's ravines, and ridges, and each ravine is a holler, and they were that's the local, that's the neighborhood, and that's it's not just I've heard of what a holler is, and but when you see that, and it's just street, you only have enough room to have one house on either side of these, roads, sometimes dirt roads, whatever, and go up as high as they can in these hollers. But you meet families and they're like, oh yeah, I grew up on the holler over there, and I've been in this holler for the past 50 years, and my granddaddy grew up on the holler up over there, and it's pretty cool. It's just a normal, it's like, someone living in a different block or a different neighborhood,
Yeah. Well, growing up coon hunting in that area, you usually hunted one or two ways. You either sent the dogs up the holler, which meant, usually there was some kind of footpath that followed the creek, no matter how small it was.
Right.
And if it was a little bigger, there would be a road, that would go up there if there was any dwellings, any houses or whatever up the way. But there was usually always a creek, it's a drainage there.
Right.
And there was usually enough room for some kind of road, maybe a two-track type road, or it may be bigger. And if it was a pretty good-sized hollow, then there may be a railroad track that went up there to a mine processing, or what was commonly called a tipple, a coal tipple. Did you hear that term at all?
I didn't. No,
okay.
I didn't spend quite enough time to get to that one. But.
Okay, that's where they bring the coal out of the mines, and then they wash it, and they load it onto railroad cars. And that's what a coal tipple, Tipple, is. And but anyway, so you either hunted your dogs. Typically, if you sent them up a holler or a hollow, they would the good ones would kind of hunt it out pretty much to the head, depending on how far up you were, and then come back.
That's if they didn't strike anything.
If they didn't strike anything,
right.
Correct. Now, generally, if they did strike something, it was going to go up over the ridge on one side or the other. And the tricky part was, if you were down the hollow and the dogs struck up there and they climbed up, you might be hearing the echo, and they might be going up the right side when you think they're going up the left side. And you don't want to climb one of those things just just
for no reason.
Correct. You saw how steep some of those ridges were. But then the fun part too, in the fall of the year, was to be able to hunt out the ridges, like those. They're not quite razorback ridges, but there's usually a somewhat of a flat area that would go out a ridge, and you could walk out the ridge, and the dogs would hunt in front of you and go out and hit a coon track, maybe where the coon had been feeding in the oaks and wild grapes and so forth.
And then you could stand up on the ridge and get a little bit better hearing, right?
Exactly. And one of the favorite things, would be to sit or stand on one of those ridges and hear a dog, as we would say, fall off into the holler and strike a coon and trail it up that creek, and and maybe up on a side one way or the other, and locate and come treat. Now that right there was an awesome experience, and didn't happen all that often because coon were very scarce when I grew up there.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot more coon in those areas now than there used to be. But there aren't nearly as many hunters as there used to be either.
Right.
But, well, that's neat for me to think that you, given your many travels, were able to experience that area that really was so familiar to me. Yeah. Very, very cool. Well, and thanks for sure, and I'm sure coming from the folks in the Carolinas and Tennessee and all that have experienced assistance and help from people like you, that's just terrific. All right, we had our White River recap episode here a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and I interviewed 5 different guys that went to the White River, and some of them for the first time. And the experiences were individual experiences, but they had a familiar ring to it. But I don't want to influence you or your account of your trip this year. I want to hear about it. I want to hear it all. How'd you find out about the White River? Why did you decide to go? Where did you go, and who with, and the whole story?
Well, forgive me because I haven't heard that episode, and I try and listen to your podcast as much as I can, but maybe it's for the better that I haven't heard that one because I definitely won't be influenced. I actually heard the White River from you. You talked about your annual trips, on your podcast, and I've heard it, and it sounded like coon hunting heaven. And I looked it up, and my birthday is November 27th, so it was right near Thanksgiving this year, and I said, I'll just take the week off and do what I want to do the most, which is coon hunt. And so I decided to drive out there, and I'd never been there before, and I just found a little cabin to rent in DeWitt, or DeWitt. I don't know how.
Yeah, DeWitt to the locals.
DeWitt,
yeah,
right, and cute little town.
Yeah,
but it was super close to the refuge,
right?
And so I just decided to venture out there, and I used my Onyx app, to try and look at trails, and it was kind of hard. Like most places, I learned really quickly. Usually when I hunt off the map in a new place that I've never been, I always look for the water, and I was like, okay, that's where I want to go hunt, where there's going to be some water, some creek, whatever. But I learned real quick, when you're in the refuge and in Arkansas, avoid the water. So after the first night, I had to rethink my game plan and try and find new access points, which was a little challenging.
Okay, we had a little glitch there, Matt, and we were rocking, rolling right along there, and all of a sudden the lights went out in Georgia, but literally. But anyway, we were talking about the White River, and you were saying that when normally when you go someplace, you like to use your Onyx app, which I do too. I use it out of the White River all the time, and that you like to kind of find out where the water is, and that's where the coon's going to be. But you had a little bit of different take on that. You were saying that you learned to avoid the water out there.
Right. Yeah. That was I learned that pretty quick. The
Yeah.
first night I was out there,
Right.
I had to rethink how I was going to approach things.
Well, as we were talking there, and I want you to kind of recap that a little bit, because you were this Bluetick female, she'll go hunting.
Yeah, she will. She doesn't mind getting gone. And yeah, we were joking. It's funny. I drove all the way out to Arkansas with, I don't know, you said how many thousands of acres there were, but I got to experience what many people do, and had to knock on some doors and get permission to go on property to go get her when she was treed off of the refuge and off of the public land. So yeah, she'll go.
Well, you opened the door there to something. Generally speaking, unless we're hunting on private property to start our hunt, we don't have trouble with the dogs getting off the refuge. We have, I think, on one occasion, I remember a couple of years ago. How were those landowners to deal with out there?
It was really pleasant. Thankfully that there was a house with a road. I could see on my maps that there was a road that went through the back of this property, and it looked like I could just drive right to her, and that turned out to be the case. But there was a small house there, so I knocked on the doors, and it was a young kid, and he said he didn't own the property, but he was sure the owners would be fine with it. And I told him beforehand, I was like, I'll just go get her. She's treated, and you can hear her, but I won't shoot anything, and typically that's how I would do it. But he said, oh no, I think they would want you to, if there's a coon, shoot it. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I got to knock on the door when I left and tell him I took care of it, and he was pretty happy, because they were, they had a bunch of deer stands and corn out there, and a lot of people we're talking too about how much duck hunting there is. And so there's a lot of private property, and that wasn't actually on the White River. I was hunting another public that's near there. So I did a little bit of exploring on that trip as well, not just the refuge.
Well, I think that's good advice for anyone when you go out there. Take advantage of those downtimes during the day and get out and scout. And, the refuge, as I had mentioned to you, it's 160,000 acres. Yeah. That's a lot of territory. And you have to learn it. It's a process. I certainly don't know it all. I've hunted much more on the north unit than I have the south, just basically because of the time of the year that we usually go. Right. But to get out and scout around, and I've found the Onyx program our app to be very helpful in that regard, finding out where the property lines are and the roads and all of that. Well,
yeah, it's great. I bounce back and forth. I use the Dogtra tracking system and Onyx, so I, constantly going back and forth between the maps, and I can usually get a pretty good idea of where I'm at, what it's going to look like. But like I said, it's different out there with the water.
Yeah, well, you were basically hunting out of your pickup as opposed to off an ATV. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Well, I tell people that too. You don't have to have an ATV. Part of the experience that a lot of guys like is be able to ride their ATVs, especially on private land where it's possibly not, permitted back home. Like
Right.
here, I don't have anywhere really. I have some ranches that I hunt here in Florida, but to trailer out an ATV, and I don't have a side by side. I have a 4-wheeler.
Okay.
My buddies out there, I'm an old retired guy. They're some of them are in business and all of this, so they got all the toys. But no, that's a joke that we have all the time about why I don't buy a side by side. But to be
'Cause they all have
perfectly
one.
honestly, I would use it about 1 week out of the year, and that would be all the time I would have. So my old Suzuki 4 quad does just fine for me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a 4-wheeler or a side by side, but I did just get a new toy. I got a thermal, and that actually came in real handy out there in the refuge, because that was one of the things I was going to tell you that I noticed out there. And I don't know if it's coincidence or what, but it seems like the coons out there were smart and they could hide. And I definitely was able to take advantage of using that thermal.
Well, that's absolutely true. And we've noticed that for years. The coons are hard to find in those trees out there. There's a lot of oaks, and there's a lot of leaves that's still on. Traditionally, oak trees.
There were a lot of leaves.
Yeah, the leaves kind of hang on the oaks longer than the other trees. And those coons are pretty sharp. They don't look at you. So the thermal would really work well. Now, I don't have one. I don't competition hunt, and that's a sizable investment to buy one of those things. But if I were out there training dogs and hunting with any regularity, I would definitely have one. I think that's one of the greatest tools that a dog trainer especially could have.
It's definitely come in handy. And the old saying, they're a lot easier to find when they're there, is still true, but the thermal does help. And even sometimes I noticed out there, I could see a coon. It might even look at me, and then it would disappear, and there was no hole, nothing. It was just gone. And even with the thermal, I couldn't find it, and I knew it was there at one time. But that's just how good they were at hiding. So that was pretty impressive.
I don't know if that – of course, that whole refuge gets pounded pretty hard during that month and a half or whatever that it's open.
Sure.
But year-round, they're not getting hunted, those coons. Right. And I don't know if that makes them wilder or, or what. But, they're often not easy to find for sure. And when you get these old eyes into the mix, and then some issues with balance and everything else. Last year I got, not this past season, but in 23, we had the dog split treed. Nubbin and I were hunting together, and I was hunting Fever, and he was hunting his Kate female walker, and they split, 50 yards apart or so. And walking in, I saw Fever's coon, and so I said, well, I'm going to go try find Kate's first. And find it, and because I know where this other one is. And, man, I couldn't find it. I had to lay down on my back on a bank. I finally found the coon. Then I couldn't get the coon in my scope. I believe me, for a guy that used to hunt by himself 90% of the time and prided myself on finding coons and being able to knock them out and all that,
things have changed a little bit.
Things are changing for sure.
Yeah.
But at least I'm still able to go, and for that I'm very, very thankful. Well, tell me about Ruby, about how you started her and all. She was just a puppy when you got her, right?
Yeah, I picked her up 7 weeks old in Texas, and brought her back to my house in Atlanta. And I started. I have a park across the street from where I live. So I live in the city, but there's a pretty good sized park with a creek that runs through it. It's about 25 acres. There's tennis courts and a frisbee golf course. But it was perfect to just start going on walks in the woods, across the street. So I started doing that when she was young. And then I just started training her there when I first laid a drag for her for the first time. And then I trapped a coon in the park and let her see it and run it in tree. And then I started, progressing from there to bigger properties. But
there a lot of pups are being started in a kind of urban setting, probably more than you would think. Days of everybody grew up on a farm and all that have long passed,
Right.
And so guys, you got to have a desire to do it, which you obviously do. But there are resources, and that's pretty much the situation here where I am.
Yeah.
I kind of rethought my training here. I've got squirrels everywhere. But then I thought, well, I don't really want to get this puppy started on squirrels. I know
foot, for sure.
My good friend Jimmy Meeks up in North Carolina has trained a ton of Walker puppies, and he starts them on squirrels, and he likes that. He gets them fired up, and he'll catch a squirrel. And of course the squirrel really puts up a lot of movement and action and all in a trap,
Right.
but and gets the pup excited for sure. But I made the decision I would go to back off on the squirrels, and I think a lot of it was making the windows rattle in the house when he'd see a squirrel out. Here in Florida. We have these lanais, or what we call Florida rooms, and we have one at the back of the house, and it's all glass on two sides. So they can look, they can see the squirrels. And we have a dachshund here, and he likes to bark at them too, but he won't tree a lick. He'll run a squirrel to the tree. As soon as it gets up the tree, he's done. He's going somewhere. Yeah. But not.
Yeah, there's tons of squirrels in this park across from my house, and they're all over my house roof too. But that was one thing I said, I'm going to have to knock that out right away. So for sure. But it didn't take much, to say this isn't what the game is, But.
Right. Well, I'm enjoying these video clips that you have on your social media and seeing Ruby.
Cool, thanks.
And she's quite a tree dog and an intense, and she's focused and all. Did that start pretty early for her?
It did. And we had talked about learning the differences with dogs, and it's a constant learning process, but that was one of Sargeant's main issues. Was he was very accurate and, good strike trail, but he would tree and leave the tree, and he'd go find another one to tree before I could get to him. And, I've tried all the tricks and everything I could. I put a lot of time into him, but he just doesn't like to stay treed. And so I was afraid of her doing that, not knowing. And honestly, I probably hyped her up too much on a tree because I had to bring her back. She would smell the scent and want a tree wherever she was at, So that was a learning curve. But she's always been a real hard stay put tree dog. That's one thing that's been so nice is if she's treed, she's staying there till I get there. I'm going to have to walk. And out in Arkansas, I walked a few miles to get to her, and
No doubt.
and
Yeah.
sometimes hours, and not hours, but at least an hour she'd be treed, and so that's pretty nice. That's one thing I'm really
Absolutely. To have
don't
a
have to
young.
worry about.
Yeah. And how old is she now?
She's almost 2. She'll be 2 February 2nd.
I see.
So
I see.
I've been calling her a pup, so I think maybe after 2 years old, she won't be a puppy anymore.
Well,
I don't know.
PKC still has super stakes for 3-year-olds.
Right. Right. Yeah, she's a super stake dog, so that's,
Yeah. So
I've
you
had a
do.
few,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, I was going to say I had a few goals when I picked her up. That was one thing David asked me. He was like, "So, do you have any goals? What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, I'd like one to have a dog that'll treat coons consistently. And then next step, I'd like to be able to take kids out with it, that it can do its job and kids can follow it and have fun and see what a dog does." And I've been able to have both of those, thankfully, so far. I've been able to take some kids out from my church and their dads, and
that's great. Yeah.
And it was cool because they told me, "Hey, my son just read Where the Red Fern Grows. I heard you coon hunt, would you mind taking us?" And I'm like, "Sure, I usually go by myself, so it'd be great to have company without other dogs, when I'm training."
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've
Well,
been doing that,
that's
and then,
the thing, and I'm interrupting, and
that's all right.
that's not being a good host. But that was always the thing, the conflict that I had. I like to hunt by myself because I was usually starting a young dog.
Right.
And I like to solo them, and they need that. I believe once they start running and treeing on their own, they need to be soloed. Yeah, they need a little socialization from time to time to be with other dogs, but it's important. And so there's that conflict. Well, do I call somebody to go with me? And usually, though, that entails someone with a dog. But now with the kids, like as you said, that's the ideal situation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say my next goals were hopefully to be able to qualify for the Super States next year. So, it'll take a lot of work, but she definitely has the ability. Super talented dog. So if we can figure it out and get lucky, have some fun on the way.
Well, it takes that luck factor. I don't know that I really believe in luck, but the circumstances have to go your way, to make everything fall together. A couple of questions. What about her siblings? Any litter mates or anything? If you're following or know anything about them at all?
Yeah, actually, she only had. The litter was there. I think there was only 5 pups that made it. And I know, so I have Ruby, and Kelly Littlejohn has a dog from that litter called Trimmer, and he's knockout, super loud. I haven't got to see him in person, but we share videos, and he posts some on the internet, and awesome looking dog. And David Simons has another male called Hank that he said he's keeping him a secret, but he's pretty good looking dog, a big dog, and they're fun. So and there's a couple others that I haven't kept up with, but from what I've heard, they're all doing pretty good. So,
well, have you had her on the bench yet? She's a beaubeautiful hound. Leggy, got beautiful, tight feet.
I haven't.
Really.
I haven't had the opportunity to put her on the bench yet, and I don't know if I will with her, but in the future, I definitely would like to
do one. Yeah,
like to show, because I actually met your friend Tim Currens. Is that his name? or Lee
Lee
Kearns.
Kearns. Oh yeah,
Yeah, I met him at Walker Days, and he was awesome. I really respected his approach, and you've had him as a guest, and
yeah,
it's cool to hear him talk about having dogs that look good and hunt good. And
yeah.
I just sat with him. I didn't know who he was when I met him. I was just like, this guy looks like he knows what he's doing, and he was kind of pointing things out to me, and that inspired me to want to get on the bench eventually.
Well, good. Lee is always like mentoring young people, and he's just a super guy, one of my dearest friends, and a wealth of knowledge when it comes to hounds. He was a very active coon hunter back in the day. Lee is now well into his 80s. I think he may be like, I want to say 86 maybe. But
awesome. Yeah,
he's
super
still,
cool dude.
He is. He really is. Okay, I noticed that you're friends with the new owner of Coon Dog Wear.
That's right.
What's his initials?
BK.
BK, yes.
William Kyling. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of my buddies that I get to hunt with as much as we can, and he's part of the Rock Creek Coon Hunters Association, so I'll go to club hunts out there and just pleasure hunt with him. So he's been really fun. I think he started coon hunting around the same time I did, or not much before. So we talk pretty often about how our dogs are doing, and he owns some really classy dogs. And
he made big news. Yeah, he made big news when he bought the Apollo dog. From Autumn Oaks Winter and a lot more. Have you met a young man named Keenan Ruddy? He's a friend.
No, I don't believe I know him.
Yeah.
Okay.
He is a friend of BK's, and he got a plot puppy from Lucas Clemens, who bred his female to our fever dog. And he calls him Midnight Cowboy. He lives in North Georgia. Yeah. Georgia.
I think we went hunting one night, and I saw that pup. He was pretty young and small, but he was out there running around. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I enjoy communicating with him. We kind of get on the messenger and back and forth quite a bit at times. But yeah,
he seems real excited about that pup and getting it going. So.
Yeah, well, I hope it makes a good one for him. Well, that's it's exciting to see these young dogs come along, and then to see you being able to take a 7-week-old puppy, and then in her, second year now?
Yeah.
Taking her to White River, hunting her by herself, treeing coons out there, and that's the amazing thing about this to me, how they progress and how the genetics take over. I love this one picture you have here shot through the thermal of her at the base of the tree, and it looks like there's a whole tree full of coons up there.
That's that's not the only time that's happened. I think actually I brought out a friend and his son. It was the first time we went coon hunting, and he was the one who read where the red fern grows. Sure enough, she treed one with 3 or 4 in it, and he was so impressed. He was like, "How did she find all of them in the one tree?"
It's refreshing.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, to watch the young hunters. The things that kind of seem commonplace to us can be really a wonder, to a new hunter.
Totally.
Absolutely. Well, I am glad.
I just wanted to share. It's been cool, like exposing this to young hunters and young people, but also adults, because my background is so different than coon hunting, and so I get to kind of traversing both worlds, this country life and this,
Mm-hmm.
Urban life,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of be a bridge between it. And so it's been a lot of fun for me. That's one of the things I really enjoy about it, is I get to talk with people from all over, but, open their eyes to different things, and see people in the park and talk about my dogs, or they'll pull me on my skateboard, and but then sometimes I get upset. They'll, be loud or whatever. And I'm saying, it's okay. They can treat coons. So,
Well,
but,
what do you ever get any negative feedback when you talk to people that don't know anything about the dogs or the sport?
no, I mean, sure. Like, some people don't understand it, and that their first question is, raccoons, like, what do you do when you shoot them? What do you do with them?
Yeah.
And that's a great way to open the conversation. It's like, well, it's called hunting. It's not called killing. So I don't shoot every one that they tree. They tree quite a bit, and I only shoot a few. But so that's cool to open up
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
conversation, because a lot of people don't consider that. And
Yeah.
and it's
Well,
cool
for
to
most
share it. Yeah.
people, like down here, a raccoon is a nuisance.
Right.
They get into the attic or whatever, and there they eat the cat food, which we got the craziest laws in the world here in Florida, or regulations in some of these
Sure.
towns. They got feral cats running around. Now, not in my neighborhood, thankfully, but in some neighborhoods. And the rule is that it's fine if you live trap them, but you have to have them neutered and then turn them back loose.
Wow.
And we know as hunters, a feral cat's probably the hardest thing on game, songbirds and squirrels and everything else. But it's just people make laws that don't understand wildlife at all. But
Totally. So
yeah,
I hope to be, at least one person that they'll think about, and kind of it might change their perception of what a hunter is, and how they do it, and that opens up other, avenues of the ethics of it, and then that carries over to other hound hunting, and people.
sure.
The more I get to know them, they have more questions, and then they're exposed to quite a bit, because it is another world, and
Oh,
so it's cool to get to
absolutely.
share that with people who wouldn't have any other access to it.
Right. And, like getting back to our faith a little bit, it's often been said we're the only Bible that some people ever read. Well, our lives, people are watching us. And especially if we're hunters, they're
sure.
watching us, and they're watching to see if we're just wanton, bloodthirsty killers,
Right.
or do
Right.
we really love and appreciate the dogs? And that's one of the reasons that I post pictures of my dogs in the house. I'm trying to get people to see that these hounds are amazing dogs, and that
Totally.
and which brings up a question, not a question really, but now Ruby is an indoors dog, right?
No,
No,
she's
you
not.
keep her outside. Okay.
She's outside. Yeah, she was indoors until she outgrew the pin I had for her. So about 6 months old, she
She needed to
graduated
go
to
outside, huh? Yeah,
outside,
yeah.
and then Sargeant became an outside dog too. And he, before I had him, he was a pet. He had never been hunted, so he's used to being inside. But now he's an outside dog, and I think it's good for all of us. I get in
Oh,
my
yeah.
house,
Good for your
but
peace of mind,
I
isn't
go
it?
outside, and I love on them and hang out with them every chance I get, and then I take them out for walks,
Yeah,
and like I said, they'll pull me on my skateboard or even ride a bike, and they run with me, and
yeah. Well,
so I definitely get the best of both worlds.
exactly. Well, I guess the point I was trying to make or wanted to make was that you're talking about Ruby hunting hard, and you're making those mile walks in the refuge and all that stuff. the way she was raised inside or having that daily interaction certainly hasn't affected that adversely at all, has it?
In a negative way, absolutely not. It's I only see positive to it. And some people, they'll. I think Big Rock, Kelly Lil John's dog, stays inside. He's earned his inside rights, and that's a coon dog. He's
Yeah.
Grand Night champion and gold champion, if
Right.
not platinum champion by now. So
Well, true confessions are good for the soul. Fever is not an indoors dog.
yeah.
He has way too much energy.
Yeah.
Fever, that dog has got more drive and determination. And, he's definitely, it'd be a real chore for him to settle down to the couch, I would think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's cool because it's just another talking point. When I meet people or my neighbors learn that they're like, wow, it's cold, your dogs aren't outside. And no, dogs can stay outside, and I built them nice houses. They're insulated. I put them
Exactly.
in crates in the garage with a heater when it gets real cold, or I have fans in the summer. And so I think it's cool that people get exposed to that. Just like folks who grew up with only outside dogs, it's okay to bring them inside. It's not going to hurt them. The same way you can have a pet that you love, it can live outside.
Well, my wife, is such a dog lover. And she, she knew that I wanted this puppy. I didn't really. I wasn't emphatic about it, but I thought he was a nice looking pup, and he was out of fever, and so therefore I was interested. And John Sapier, who raised the litter, had to show a video of taking the puppies down to a creek for the first time, and this one just took off up the creek like it's going hunting, And I said, man, I like that
Hard
pup.
to turn that down, huh?
Yeah. But anyway, but she likes to keep them inside. And she says, now, I don't like it that Boo is out there by himself. He's been out there a long time. I said, Ella, the dogs, they don't mind that. But she's just such a dog lover. And a lot of people are, and they translate that into they're not lap dogs, then they're not being cared for, and that's absolutely not true. And
Totally.
But we're missionaries. We just have to keep preaching that message to people out there, And any plans to hit the hunts with Ruby when springtime hits? The hunts are going pretty good in your area, I would think, right now.
Hunts all the time. I think the next one at our club is going to be in February, beginning of February. But Ruby's in heat right now, we're taking a little break.
Yeah.
So probably get back at it in February and go as long as we can until it gets too hot in July or August. So.
Yeah. Well, I can identify with that. I don't attempt to hunt down here in summer anymore. I did when I first moved down, but I couldn't tell you that I enjoyed it at all.
And I think that's something I've learned too. I haven't been doing it all that long, just since 2020, but it's good to take breaks every now and then, and I think it's healthy for me and the dogs. Sometimes it's easy to put a lot of pressure on yourself and on the dogs, but it's to take a break and just realize, we're just having fun,
Don't we all need to just slow down? When I drive on one of these major arteries around here, everyone seems to be in such a hurry. And I'm wondering, where are they going? What is waiting down the road that they have to be there?
You're preaching to the choir, man. I live in Atlanta, and it's awful.
I know it. It's just crazy. I just wonder where are you going? I just want to ask them. When I see a homeless person, it's hard for me to resist. Being able to walk up and tell me your story, bud.
Yeah.
I guess that's maybe the writer in me. I like to hear the story, and
Sure.
I'm compassionate. I always, when I see these people, I think, Lord, as they say, except for the grace of God, there go I, But
Right.
but anyway, well, we could get off on a lot of rabbit paths here, Matthew.
Sure.
It's been awesome to talk to you.
It's been great talking with you, Steve.
I think altogether you and I have amassed something like, I don't know, we've done over an hour and a half, I'm sure. And
All right. Well, hopefully it's not too much of a snooze fest for your listeners.
I was
But I've enjoyed it, so I appreciate you calling.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to mention that. I was reading through some old reviews, and I was looking at W Hunting Supply, who we have to mention as a sponsor of this. Well, we don't have to, but I want to mention as sponsor of the podcast, makes it possible, dusupply.com. And also Alpha Dog Nutrition, a sponsor that came aboard last year, and Zepp Predator Calls, always my buddy Mark Zepp. But I was reading these reviews, and this guy said, well, Steve Fielder puts me to sleep. And I thought, well, maybe that's a positive thing. Just play it at night after a hard day.
A lot of people have a hard time going to sleep. That's right.
Yeah, but I've enjoyed this. Talking with you is a reason, and other people like you is the reason I do these podcasts, because I just enjoy the conversations and the stories and all. And I'm just really excited to see you with this nice Bluetick female. I didn't realize that you had gone on to the next level after Sargeant there. So
yeah,
it's super.
And hopefully onward and upward from there. I hope we'll see how she does. How she develops and continues to, but I might consider breeding her if she's right.
Oh, absolutely.
That's something I want to, I look up to all the guys who have put in so much work into all these breeds, and I want to be able to contribute in a positive way. So,
well, I'm kind of, it's interesting and all to see that she has big country up pretty close. I've hunted with country, and what a hound, really
for sure.
Amazing voice. When I first heard him located about, I guess he's about 100 yards or maybe 150 yards away, I thought a freight train was coming through the woods. Awesome, such a great sport. Well, Matthew Huff from Hotlanta, Georgia. It's been really a joy to talk with you, brother, to know you as a Christian brother, and also to be a fellow coon hunter with you, and looking forward to the exploits of Ruby as she goes forward. Thanks for coming on, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Me as
always.
well.
And I do want to give a little shout out, if that's all right, to
Absolutely.
the Appalachian Service Project. If anyone heard that and is interested in seeing what they do and maybe getting a group together to join them with their church youth group, but their website is asphome.org.
asphome.org. O-R-G.
That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Check them out,
you already
folks.
mentioned it, BK and his coon dog wear. And
yeah,
I have a list of friends, but I don't need to list everyone. But
I got to say this. I remember when that brand first came out, and I don't remember who the first owner was, but I thought how cool that is. And I still have a hat, one of the original hats that they put out.
That's cool.
I have that thing.
Vintage.
Yeah, it is.
You got
retro.
Maybe BK will buy it back from you. Have a reissue.
Well, I'd be glad to give it to him if he wanted to use it for that. But I hope to meet him in person someday. I have not.
Oh,
So,
yeah. He's a great dude.
yeah, everybody tells me that. So, okay, Matt, we'll catch you down the road. You and Ruby have a
All
great
right.
time treeing those raccoons, folks.
Yes,
this
sir.
This is the Gone to the Dogs podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fielder. As usual, if you want to look me up, I'll be Gone to the Dogs.